Exodus chapter 1, verse 1. Israel's suffering in Egypt. Now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Each man and his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, all his brothers, and all that generation. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen, in the event of war, that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar, in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, When you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew woman, and see them on the birth stools, if it is a son, then you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives, and said to them, Why have you done this thing, and saved the male children alive? And the midwife said to Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and give birth before the midwives come to them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mighty. And so it was, because the midwives feared God, that he provided households for them. So Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, Every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. Let's read the commentary here. Verses 1 through 22 of Exodus. Actually, it's the entire chapter, Exodus 1. So Jacob, also called Isreal, his sons, and all of their families had come to dwell in Egypt, to escape the famine that had spread as far away as Canaan. This fruitful clan of 70 Israelites multiplied so that the land was filled with them. By the time of the Exodus, the people of Israel consisted of 600,000 able-bodied men, besides their families. God was fulfilling his kingdom promise to Abraham to give him numerous descendants. See Genesis 13, verse 16. The people of Israel were becoming the nation God had promised. Verse 8 through 10. After Joseph and all of his brothers died, a new king ascended to the throne in Egypt. This Pharaoh did not know about Joseph and had no appreciation for his achievements on behalf of Egypt. As he saw the Israelite people multiplying all around him, he became alarmed, fearing that they might align with Egypt's enemies in a time of war. In verse 11, Pharaoh decided to exploit the Israelites for their economic potential. He assigned taskmasters over them and oppressed them with forced labor. Importantly, years before this, God had told Abraham that one day his offspring would be enslaved by another nation for 400 years. See Genesis 15, verse 13 through 14. That was the famine, right? It had finally come to pass. The people of Israel were now slaves, but God had also promised that he would judge the nation that mistreated them, and that Abraham's descendants would plunder their oppressors. How that would happen would soon unfold. In verse 12 to 14, as it turned out, the more Egypt oppressed the Israelites, the more they multiplied. In spite of Pharaoh's ill treatment, their numbers only continued to rise. This tells us that in the midst of their suffering, God was blessing them, yet the Egyptians came to dread them, and Pharaoh treated them ruthlessly. Verse 15 through 17, Pharaoh decided to use an even more wicked method of population control. He told the Hebrew midwives to kill any son that the Hebrew woman delivered. But the midwives refused to obey the king of Egypt. Why? They feared God. Though Pharaoh had the power to execute them, these defenseless women knew God held ultimate power and they acted on that knowledge. And in verse 18 through 21, when the king commanded when the king demanded an explanation for their disobedience to his command, the midwives lied, saying that they routinely arrived at the births too late. They decided to lie in this wicked king, who didn't deserve the truth. In order to prevent the murder of innocent children made in God's image for their actions, God was good to the midwives and gave them families. And the Israelites multiplied even more. The principle here is that when God's people are faced with only two sinful options, in this case lying and murder, we are to choose that which brings God the greater glory. Verse 22. Being foiled in his second attempt to control the Israelites' numbers was the last straw for Pharaoh. He commanded all his people to throw every son born to the Hebrews into the Nile. With this decree, the stage was set for the rise of Moses. God had blessed his people, which led to a problem, which led to more blessing, which led to worse problems, which led to preparation for God's ultimate deliverance. This is a reminder that many times God will allow blessings in our lives that will actually lead to some suffering, which will in turn lead to even greater blessings for his kingdom purposes. We, however, must patiently wait for him to work things out. Okay, that is Exodus 1. Let's continue Exodus 2.